It's time to speak up. It's time to break the silence. For the world to change, people need to speak up. Everyone needs to take a stand. It's the only way. And not in a spirit of war, but in a spirit of resilience, of healing, because we need that. But we cannot bury our heads in the sand. If we do, the world will continue to spin in the wrong direction. And we refuse to be complicit in that.
Buzz.
Quoi buzz?
Buzz.
Buzz.
Ewa Buzz.
Welcome, bienvenue, marhaba bikoum to Buzz Voices of Defiance, the podcast for minoritized people who are ready to shake up the world. I'm Shama, and every day I work with minoritized entrepreneurs, helping them find their voice, overcome their fears, and attract people who share their values, all to truly make an impact on the world. Buzz is one of my favorite words in Moroccan Darija. It's an expression of surprise. Surprise at the boldness of those who have defied the obstacles of an oppressive society and decided, I don't care, I'm doing it anyway. And it's also the surprise of that same oppressive society when it sees all these people pushing back. These are the people I want to give a platform to. And I also want to encourage you to speak out. Because only together can we change the game and finally change the world.
Buzz.
Today, I have the immense pleasure of welcoming Mona and Fabrice from KezaCréation, an agency specialized in supporting women entrepreneurs. Mona and Fabrice are a duo in both life and work, but I first met Mona during a workshop by Jasmine Tuitou, whom I interviewed in the previous episode. Since then, we've stayed in touch, had countless conversations, and even worked together when she became my client. I absolutely wanted to have them both on the podcast because they are survivors and their story deserves to be heard by as many people as possible. It is moving, powerful, and so necessary. Before we dive in, I want to issue a trigger warning. In this episode, we discuss sensitive topics such as incest, sexual violence, and the genocide of the Tutsi in Rwanda. These stories, though difficult, are essential to understanding the strength and values that drive my guests today. What makes this episode even more special is Fabrice's presence. If you follow KezaCréation, you know that Mona is usually the face of the brand and the voice of their communication. Fabrice, on the other hand, prefers to stay in the shadows. But today, for the very first time, he has agreed to share his story and perspective himself. And for that, I am deeply grateful. The three of us had the chance to discuss many topics, including resilience and personal reconstruction, the fight against injustice and discrimination, stereotypes and external judgments, and of course, commitment, respect, and passing on values in both personal life and business. As usual, I used AI to translate their parts, and my voice, well, it is mine. I'll let you dive into this powerful conversation. Enjoy! Hey Mona, hey Fabrice. Well, first of all, Happy New Year. I hope you're both doing well. And I want to dive right in with two questions. First, how are you? How are you really doing? And second, what do you think was the first act of rebellion you can remember? Even if it seems super insignificant, was there a moment where you pushed back, stood your ground, or challenged something for the first time?
Well, first of all, hey, I'm doing great. It's the start of the year. We're feeling good and energized because we got some proper rest. Hopefully you're doing well too. I'd say my first real act of rebellion, at least the most symbolic one, was when I filed my complaint when I reported the violence I had endured. That was a turning point for me. And what about you, Fabrice?
Hey there. I think my first act of rebellion was related to my personal experience. It was at the prefecture when I felt like I wasn't being heard and I had to stand up for myself and fight for my rights.
Okay. It's really interesting that you both mentioned these events, and we'll definitely dive deeper into them as we go along in the podcast because they are clearly defining moments in your lives. You often say that you are both survivors. Could you share more about what your journeys in that sense and explain how your personal stories are at the core of your shared values? Because on your platforms, you frequently speak about fighting against injustice and discrimination toward minorities. So I would love to know more about that.
Yes, it's true that we describe ourselves as survivors. Actually, it's just a fact. When I use the term survivor, it's in relation to violence against women, specifically sexual violence, which I have survived. And for Fabrice, when he uses this word, it refers to the genocide against the Tutsis in Rwanda, the 1994 genocide that he survived. This has shaped and built us into who we are today, and it's the foundation of the commitments we hold. It's at the core of our values because, for a long time, we kept these parts of ourselves hidden. We saw them more as a burden than a strength. But today, we've chosen to turn them into our driving force, both in our personal and professional lives. We work with minorities, and we've truly made it our mission to help these individuals amplify their voices and their commitments, whether through their businesses, their storytelling, or their marketing. And we only work with people who are 100% aligned with our values.
That's incredibly interesting because it is such an important message. And beyond just the professional aspect, which is already huge, you also take meaningful action in your personal lives. You told me that you two met in 2016 at the volunteer event for the organization you had just founded, Mona, called Care and Life. Could you tell us more about this project? How did it start? How did it unfold? And how was it received? What kind of actions do you take? Of course, we'll dive into the business side of things soon because that's a key part of your work. But I find it fascinating to see how everything is connected, how all these aspects of your lives are intertwined.
Yes, of course. Fighting against injustice has always been the driving force of my life in general. And that's how the Care and Life Association was born. I actually founded it with my sister Clémence. She was the one who initially came up with the idea. Care and Life is an organization aimed at improving access to healthcare on the African continent, while also supporting families in difficult and precarious situations, not only in terms of medical care, but also through sponsorship programs that help provide access to education. Supporting women has always been a core pillar in everything I've done, whether it's in motherhood, healthcare, or life in general. The association was founded in 2016. And at the beginning, my sister and I had to find funding in all sorts of ways. Of course, no major institution wanted to support us right away because we still had everything to prove in terms of legitimacy. We were just two young women with a huge vision. I was in my 20s at the time, and my sister had just turned 30. And to make things even more ambitious, we didn't start with small-scale projects. We immediately set out to build a large medical center, including a maternity ward, a hospital, a pharmacy, and a dispensary. When we first shared our vision, people looked at us like we were crazy. They wondered, who do they think they are? What do they think they're going to achieve? So, we did what we had to do. We raised funds however we could. One of the first things we organized was a charity event in Lyon. We needed volunteers for all sorts of roles, and we also needed a DJ who would agree to perform for free. That's when someone gave us Fabrice's contact information. When I reached out to him, I expected him to maybe say yes, but he was way more enthusiastic than I had imagined. He was all in, helping us with flyers, bringing people to the event, and just supporting us every step of the way. And that's how we met. We became really good friends, and then later, we fell in love, and then we got married. And it all started because of the shared commitment we had.
I love that. I love this. It's amazing. And actually, Fabrice, when we talked, you said something that really stuck with me. You mentioned that when you participated in that volunteer event, it was actually your first act of activism because before that, given your personal situation, you didn't feel like you could do more. And I think this is such an important point to highlight because as a community, it's crucial that those of us who have certain privileges use them to speak up, to take action, because not everyone always has that ability. And Mona, at the time when Fabrice was fighting for his own safety, you had more mental bandwidth, so to speak, to take action. And you did through this association. So, Fabrice, could you share more about your arrival in France and the battle you had to go through to get your papers in order?
Yes, of course. So, my journey, my story, it's a bit complicated, so it might take some time to explain. But first, I just want to apologize because I'm not really comfortable speaking out loud like this. Sometimes I need my wife here beside me. She's really comfortable with it, and she knows my story so well. She knows everything, so if I struggle to say something, I know she'll be there, just like she's always been there to help me get through it. So, my journey. I arrived in France as a student. I studied, got my degrees, and at that time, I had my papers, so I was able to work while continuing my studies. I was fighting, to make it work. But then, when I finished my studies, they basically told me to go back home after my degree. But for me, going back to Rwanda wasn't an option. Because of the genocide, because of everything I had lived through, I had absolutely no desire to return. I looked at my diploma and thought, what am I supposed to do with this back there? So I had to fight. I had to request permission to stay in France, and more importantly, permission to work. And that's where things got really long and really complicated. They granted me permission to stay in France, but without the right to work. That was incredibly hard. Because, okay, you're allowed to be in the country, but you can't work. So how are you supposed to live? I kept fighting. I went to the prefecture. I submitted every diploma, every job offer, every possible document that could help me get work authorization. But every time I went, they told me they had never even opened my file. That drove me crazy until the day Mona came with me. At that point, she didn't really know this world. That day, she got a real glimpse of what I was going through. She had never imagined that something like this could even happen. She saw firsthand how they spoke to me. For the people working at the prefecture, we weren't even human. We were treated like we didn't belong, and that enraged Mona. I remember that moment so clearly. She was furious, even more than I was. I mean, of course, I was angry, but at some point I was just exhausted. I didn't know what else to do. But Mona, I remember that day, I discovered a whole other side of her that I had never seen before. She was so angry. She completely lost it.
And it was only when we finally decided to leave Lyon and move to a smaller town with a smaller prefecture that had fewer applications to process. It was only at that point that things finally changed. It took 3 years while we were together. And for Fabrice, it had already been years before that. But as soon as we switched prefectures and arrived in a place where the system wasn't completely overwhelmed, they actually opened the file. And inside? Everything was in order. There was no reason for his request to have been delayed. Everything was perfectly in place for him to get his residency permit. And sure enough, he got it very quickly. So basically, Lyon's prefecture had been stringing him along for 10 years. It was absolutely outrageous. And we're talking about his case, but in reality, this happens to hundreds of thousands of people. It's not an isolated case. It was happening to everyone. We witnessed some really violent, heartbreaking scenes. I remember a woman at the prefecture who tried to set herself on fire right there in front of everyone. It's absolutely soul-crushing. They strip you of your dignity, your humanity. You're nothing but a faceless number to them. Thank God, not all prefectures are like this. When we moved to the new city, people were incredibly kind. They listened. They treated Fabrice like a human being. But in big cities, they're completely overwhelmed. They don't have the resources they need. And when that happens, people stop being seen as people. That was the first time I ever witnessed something like this. I genuinely didn't think it was possible in France to treat people the way we saw them being treated, especially considering that every single person there had been through hell. When you're at the asylum office, the people around you have been through the absolute worst. These are people carrying heavy stories. And yet, instead of recognizing their pain, they're made to feel like they don't even have the right to ask for help. It's beyond cruel. It's absolutely inhumane.
Ooh, the joys of French administration. I've been through it too, but I'm far more privileged compared to what Fabrice experienced for sure. And I've heard absolutely horrific stories. And yes, Mona, you're absolutely right. Depending on where you are, it's worse in some places than others. In the Paris region, I remember that depending on where my friends lived, there were situations that were truly unbearable. And yes, you feel like just a number, or not even that. The level of dehumanization is so extreme that I completely understand why Mona, as Fabrice said, you got much angrier because after a while, you just get used to it. You end up adopting a mindset of, okay, I need to make myself as small as possible, just hoping things go through. I say yes to everything. I bring like a 3 pound file, just praying it all works out. It's a nightmare, and it lasted 10 years for you, Fabrice. This story is unbelievable. And by the way, how did this situation, I mean, you meeting and the fact that Fabrice was undocumented, impact your relationship? How was it perceived by those around you? What did people say? What did they think?
The cliche, the all too predictable cliche. It was perceived quite harshly from both sides, actually. On my side, not everyone, thankfully. I do have a fairly open-minded circle. But for many, even within my own family, the assumption was, oh, he's an undocumented guy who found himself a nice little white girl to open the door to what he was looking for. And on your side, Fabrice, I think it was the same. Your circle thought, yeah, you got with her just to get your papers. Basically, our love was seen as fake. People thought I was being taken advantage of, and people thought Fabrice had played his cards right and tricked me. But internally, what was actually happening was so different. Fabrice was the one who kept our daily life running smoothly. He was the one supporting us because I was still studying. And despite not having a legal work status, he always managed to find a way to pay rent, buy groceries, cover bills. On top of that, he helped me so much with legal procedures, even though he himself wasn't given that same chance. What people saw was the complete opposite of what was really going on.
But actually, you once said something that deeply moved me. And that was the moment I told you, okay, you have to come on the podcast. I would be so happy to have you both here. You said a sentence, and I quote, while everyone saw me as the savior, it was Fabrice who was saving me.
That's exactly it. Because when we met, I was in a really bad place. I had been going through a criminal procedure for over 10 years, fighting for the justice I deserved for the incest I had experienced. And I was very alone. Extremely alone. Carrying that weight on my shoulders was incredibly hard, and I was on the verge of giving up when I met him. And he was the one who gave me the strength to keep going. He accompanied me everywhere. He was there the day of the verdict, and on all the other days too. He followed me through everything. He carried me, gave me wings to go all the way, and thanks to him, I got justice. On top of that, I was struggling financially, and in the end, he was the one who pulled me out of that mess. I was caught in a cycle of self-destruction because I was in such a bad place, and from the moment he moved in with me, I found inner peace. He helped me cut out everything that was making me suffer, even the little things. I was a smoker at the time. I drank alcohol. I was physically sick from stress. And all of that disappeared within a few months because he was there, making sure things got better. So while people imagined that I was the one pulling him out of a difficult situation, that I was his support, that I was the savior, the truth was, inside, it was the complete opposite.
Incredible. This story is just mind blowing. And I'm so happy that you're sharing it here because there are so many prejudices and cliches. That's exactly why I think your story is so important to tell because I believe there are so many stories like yours that go untold, that remain unheard. And I find it absolutely beautiful that you're starting to speak about this through your business. And as you mentioned earlier, it's your values that led you to create your business the way it is today. I mean, a communications and graphic design agency. And you also pointed out that it's specifically aimed at women entrepreneurs. And I know from having focused on women since the very beginning of my business, even back when I had a hypnotherapy practice, I know that there's always that annoying question that comes up, but that says, like, but why only women? But in your case, I imagine it must be even worse because Fabrice, a man, is also part of the business. But there's a reason behind all of this. So I don't know if Fabrice, you want to talk about it, or if Mona, you would like to explain. But could you share why you chose to work specifically with women entrepreneurs?
First of all, I just want to say that, yes, we hear this phrase all the time. There are men telling us that it's discriminatory. We hear it a lot. We're well aware that it can stir things up sometimes. But the truth is, we can justify it. And honestly, I think you, Fabrice, are probably the most legitimate one to talk about this, if you feel up to it.
Yes, actually, my whole life I owe it to women. It goes way back, all the way to my birth. There's my mother, who took such good care of me, who did everything to make sure I made it this far. And even during the genocide, I was saved thanks to women. There was my sister. We were lost, just the two of us. She's only a year older than me, but she was the one who truly helped me. Then we ended up in another family where it was a mother who was running everything. She took my sister and me in from the streets and protected us throughout the genocide until the very end. And I also owe so much to Mona because she says I saved her, but the truth is she saved me. She really saved me. It's a long story. I don't know if we have time to go into all of it, but I've come a long way. And what matters most is that the man I am today is because of her. I was lost. Even with everything we talked about earlier, I didn't have papers. I felt like nothing. And after everything I had been through, I had started to believe that I was nothing. But Mona made me understand that it was all false, that these were just thoughts shaped by my experiences. She made me see that I am a man, that I have values, that I need to stand by them and be true to myself. It's all because of her. So honestly, she's the one who saved me, not the other way around.
Let's say we saved each other then.
Exactly. We saved each other. I also want to thank my sisters who have always been there for me. Mona's sisters as well, who have helped me so much. And I can't forget Mona's mother, who has been incredibly supportive. She even accompanied me to the prefecture 2 or 3 times. She was always there, and to this day, she still is. If I ever need anything, I know I can count on her. I am deeply grateful to all these women. And lastly, to my little daughter, Keza. That's where the name of our agency, KezaCréation, comes from. She was born on a very special day, March 8th, International Women's Rights Day. And of course, a huge thank you to you, Shama. You gave me this opportunity to express myself today. This is my first time doing something like this. I know I'm not very comfortable speaking, but you made space for me and I truly appreciate it.
I'm the one who should be thanking you for accepting the invitation. Honestly, I don't even have the words after such a powerful speech, and I feel like I should just end the podcast here. To everyone listening, I mute my mic when my guests speak, and it's a good thing because you would have heard me like sniffling the entire time, trying not to burst out in tears. Okay, so let me just refocus for a bit. Seriously, thank you so much for this incredibly honest and heartfelt sharing. It's so clear that there's something really powerful that radiates from both of you, not just when talking to you, but even in the way you communicate online. Mona, I've been following you for years now. We met through a training program, and then I discovered your business, and I've watched how much it has evolved. At the beginning, it was very professional, of course, but still quite polished, quite neutral. We didn't really know who was behind KezaCréation or what values were driving it. Even now and then, there would be a little mention of female entrepreneurs, but that was it. And then something shifted. At some point, I saw the switch. You recently made a post about softness and rage, and I commented saying something like it felt like fierce softness or enraged softness. You've clearly started speaking openly about your values, your fights, your convictions. So I'd love to know What was that turning point? Was it easy or obvious for you to align your business with your values from the start? Did you both agree on this direction right away? And why this mix of softness and rage at the same time?
To follow up on what Fabrice said, for him it was clear. I have to give back to women what they have given me. I want to offer my skills, my time, and help women thrive because I owe them my life. That's something he repeats often. For me, considering my childhood and my role as a woman in society, I felt the same way. I wanted to work with women. I wanted to help women. But it wasn't easy. At first, we knew we wanted to work with women, yet our communication was still broad, directed at everyone. We hesitated, thinking we might shut doors on potential opportunities. Honestly, things shifted naturally after a few professional experiences working with men. That's when we realized, okay, this confirms it. We absolutely do not want to work with men. It wasn't even about discrimination. It's just that the energy was completely different. We weren't vibing the same way on projects, and we felt it deeply. Then, when it came to shaping our communication, it's true. We were playing it safe. I kept telling Fabrice our messaging feels flat, dull, lifeless. Sure, we had clients, but I had so much more to say. And the more our community grew, the more I thought I want to talk. I want to say something meaningful, something strong. I want to work with people who share our values. At first, it was difficult because we weren't completely aligned. I was getting to a point where I couldn't hold my tongue anymore. I needed to speak out. And Fabrice was more cautious, thinking, but this could backfire on us. We might lose clients. In the beginning, he wasn't fully convinced about bringing these conversations into our business. But then, world events acted as a catalyst. There was one moment in particular that changed everything overnight. In October 2023, when the tragic attack happened, leading to the genocide against the Palestinian people, I knew. For me, staying silent was no longer an option. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror if I did. I would have been a traitor to myself. Especially because my husband, my in-laws, my family now, had survived a genocide. And they are among the very few who did. It was a genocide that played out on television screens. A genocide that the world knew about, but no one did anything. No one spoke up, no one took action. At that time, there were no social media platforms with the power we have today. They weren't given the space, the visibility, or the light they deserved. It is absolutely horrifying to witness people who have lived through this, knowing they were seen, knowing the world knew, and still, no one helped them. It's unbearable. And now, the same thing is happening again. And once again, people are staying silent. To me, silence would have been betraying my husband, betraying the memory of his family. It's not about the country. It's about humanity. We are human beings. And for me, it was impossible to stay silent on that. That was the moment I spoke to Fabrice about it. And of course, he said, we can't stay silent. It was difficult for him, but he knew it too. We can't stay silent. That's also when we started talking more openly about his story, about him being a survivor. That's when we decided to fully align our business with our values. We don't want to work with people who don't share them. Speaking out became vital. Then, there was another moment that pushed our communication in a different direction. It was when the news broke about Gérard Depardieu. At that time, I disappeared from social media for 15 days. When I came back, I explained why. It shook me deeply to see an open letter defending this man. It made me anxious, angry, heartbroken. It felt like nothing would ever change. But when I shared about it after my break, I realized something. I wasn't alone. Our audience, the people in our community, we were all feeling the same way. And that's when I thought, this is it. It's time to speak up. It's time to break the silence. Fabrice and I were literally just talking about this earlier today. We were saying, for the world to change, people need to speak up. Everyone needs to take a stand. It's the only way. And not in a spirit of war, but in a spirit of resilience, of healing, because we need that. But we cannot bury our heads in the sand. If we do, the world will continue to spin in the wrong direction, and we refuse to be complicit in that.
Listen, you know I can only agree. I have no choice but to agree with that. It is so important for everyone to speak up because people are afraid to speak out because they fear for their individual safety. But when we all speak up, it gives courage and provides individual protection. Speaking collectively protects individually. But I want to bounce back on something you said earlier because I hear this a lot. Yeah, but my business is doing fine without me openly sharing my beliefs, so I take the risk. Why risk backlash, clashes, shitstorms, or whatever? But you've told me before, your communication felt suffocating at some point. And I want us to talk about that because people don't realize the impact it has. It might seem invisible at first, but not being fully yourself in your business and in how you present your business, that has a real impact. Can you tell us more about that?
So at first, when we were at the stage of just questioning whether we should speak up or keep creating pretty polished content, we asked ourselves so many things. Would it hurt our legitimacy? Would we upset people? Would we lose clients? Would we lose contracts? Would we get labeled as the troublemakers? That was a real concern. I can't count how many times people jokingly called me a buzzkill because my beliefs took precedence over so many things. And I wondered, do I really want that in my business? But then I asked myself, what is business? It's just us. It's what takes up 80% of our time. So it has to reflect who we are. Did we have clients before we started communicating this way? Yes. Did we lose some? Yes. But do we have even more now? Absolutely. We've never worked as well as we do now. It's not only because of our values, but let's be real. Every time we speak up, there's an impact. It creates a stronger bond. We connect with people who might not feel ready to speak up yet, and seeing someone else do it can be just as liberating. Yes, we lost a contract. Yes, we lost a few followers. But honestly, not that many. Because I think the people who followed us already knew who we were. And also, we're for peace. We're never going to call out one person to protect another. That's not the goal. So I think the way we expressed ourselves helped. But not because we had to make it gentle, just because that's who we are. And now? Most of the time, when people reach out to us, they say, I read your about page, I read your posts, and now I want to work with you even more. And when we shared about Fabrice's story, the very next day we had 9 quote requests because people saw that post and thought, I want to work with you. Not all 9 turned into signed contracts, of course, but it was so powerful. And that's when we knew we did the right thing by speaking up.
But yes, of course. And actually, you mentioned it. You said, yes, we do it with gentleness because that's who we are. And I realized we didn't really stop to talk about that. Earlier, we were talking about gentleness and rage. Why this combination? How does it reflect who you are?
I think we have experienced so much violence in our lives that gentleness has become something vital. We need softness. If you look around, even here, you can see that everything around us is white. We need that gentleness to contrast with the rage we have felt inside, that intense anger we carried for so many years. But that is slowly fading away. So, the two are always present together, but they balance each other out. It's a world of peace.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we're moving on to the ritual questions as we near the end of the episode. And the first question I'd like to ask you is, what is your dream for the world we live in today?
We dream of a world of peace, a world of forgiveness, but peace comes first.
I love it. It's giving a Miss Universe answer to a Miss Universe question, and we're here for it. That's exactly what I wish for all of us. And what are the resources you rely on that help you get closer to that dream, like step by step?
Faith, first and foremost. Faith in many things, in humanity and everything beyond. And when we thought about this question, we kept coming back to forgiveness. We truly believe that forgiveness is what leads to peace. We've seen it in our personal journeys and how powerful it can be. If we look at Rwanda today, where people now live together in peace, forgiveness played a major role, among other things, of course, but it was a crucial part of the process. And then, of course, there's our agency. Through our work, we try, in our own way, to contribute to building a more peaceful world. That's why we reinvest part of our revenue into humanitarian efforts, not just in our own association, Care and Life, but in many other organizations as well. So in a way, our clients, even without realizing it, are also part of this movement toward a better world.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Now let's get to the buzz because, after all, it's the name of the podcast. For those listening who haven't tuned in into previous episodes or the trailer, buzz is a Moroccan Darija word slash onomatopoeia of surprise. That surprise can be positive, like, wow, this person is doing something incredible, almost unbelievable, buzz. But it can also be sarcastic, like, let's say someone who constantly brags about being the most loyal friend or whatever, and then you find out they completely betrayed you. That's when you go, buzz. like like something like, seriously. So I'd love for you to share your buzz moments. You can each have your own or go with the same one if you agree. Find the positive buzz, like this wow, this admiration you'd love to send to someone or something. And then a sarcastic buzz, the one you'd love to throw out there to call things out and push for change.
We thought about it a lot, but we couldn't come up with one. But for example, could women who harness their incredible power to move mountains and establish themselves in entrepreneurship be a boss?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really super open ended. It's about who you feel like saying buzz to. And if for you, these women are people who you deeply admire, if you look at them and think, this is incredible, despite all of the struggles, despite everything, they still managed to do this, buzz. Okay, does that resonate with you when you put it that way? All right, awesome. And what about the sarcastic one?
It would be those people who claim to be super open-minded, super inclusive, because, it's the trendy thing to say. But then, when they find out that behind the agency, there's a man, and on top of that, he's Black, suddenly they're not so interested in our services anymore. It has happened a lot. Yep. At least now we don't have that problem anymore since we show ourselves and openly talk about who we are and where we come from. People know exactly who they're dealing with. The guy didn't even have papers. No more surprises.
There you go. That's exactly what I mean when I say speak up, say things. At least now there are no more surprises. Thank you both so much, really. Do you have any updates you'd like to share?
We actually set something up in response to this because we realized just how powerful our story is, how much the experiences we've been through shape everything we do, including our entrepreneurship. We created a training program to help people use their personal stories as a branding strategy, to stand out, to bring depth and strength to their communication. And we decided to make it 100% funded, meaning the government fully covers the cost of this training. So for anyone who wants to learn how to leverage their personal story to build communication that is bold, unapologetic, impactful, and that truly converts, we've developed this program, and now it's officially fundable. That's such an amazing way to kick off 2025.
Ah, that's amazing. So exciting. I'll make sure to include all the details, links, and everything in the episode description. Mona and Fabrice, thank you so, so much for accepting my invitation. I've absolutely loved listening to you and having this conversation. You made me laugh, you moved me, and I've learned so much. So just thank you.
Thank you for giving us the space to speak and express ourselves on all of this. And I also want to say a big thank you because, in part, it's thanks to you that I finally started showing up. Before Shama, I couldn't even post a picture of myself or say my name on social media. So a huge thank you to you. You've been a part of this journey.
Thank you so much for that. It truly means a lot to me. These are the words we need to hear in those moments of doubt when we wonder if we belong, if what we're doing is the right thing. So I'll hold on to them dearly, really. Thank you for everything. Wishing you both a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon.
Same to you. See you very soon.
Thank you, Shama.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Buzz Voices of Defiance. If you enjoyed it, hit the notification bell to be alerted when new episodes drop, and leave a 5-star review to help amplify this podcast that's here to uplift voices the world needs to hear. All right, see you in for another episode to help you turn your business, your project, your art into a tool of resistance, making sure the system looks at you and says, Buzz.
Buzz.